Hi, Christina Cantrill from the National Writing Project, and we are here at the National Writing Project's Resource Development Retreat in Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's July 2018. And I'm with some colleagues who are here working on a resource that will be published to The Current, so keep an eye out for their fabulous resource. That'll be about a project that they've been developing called Playable Fashion. So this project was supported by the National Writing Project as well as John Legend's Show Me campaign and the MacArthur Foundation through a grant program called LRNG Innovators. And this grant was awarded, I think it was a 2015 grant that was awarded in 2016 and was part of a set of challenges that I'll talk about in a little bit, but they responded to the second challenge, which was about connecting inside and outside of school and developing connected learning experiences for kids and with kids through those connections. So I wanted to, this project brought together a nonprofit in New York City, an arts and technology nonprofit in New York City, with the Academy for Innovative Technology, right, in a high school in Brooklyn. So I wanted our colleagues to introduce themselves, and then we'll talk more about this really exciting project and the great work that they've been doing. So, Joanne, do you want to kick us off?
My name's Joanna Gould. I work for iBeam, which is the technology nonprofit that is in Brooklyn at the moment. And we help artists who are trying to share and engage with our sort of shared future together with technology.
And I'm Crystal Tavenet. I'm the current teacher of game design for the CTE pathway at the Academy of Innovative Technology High School.
Awesome, great. So we're here at this retreat. We're with national colleagues working on lots of different resources and projects. And we had an opportunity right at the beginning to ask each other questions so that we got a sense of the work that other people were doing in the shared space as we're also working very specifically on our work. And I know the biggest question that came to you guys was, wait, what is playable fashion?
So the title's just so intriguing.
It's so intriguing.
Absolutely. Yes. And I guess like the way that we've been talking about it is sort of like in its current iteration, which is embedded into my coursework, going from its development process as an after-school program into an in-school during class program that I can run at different grade levels. And the easiest way I can explain it is teaching students video game design, technology, and fashion in a way that acknowledges that people experience technology differently and have people come in contact with things that they may have already found out about, might already use, and turn them from, as it was Ramsey who said it, turn students from consumers to producers.
Awesome. Great.
And it was co-developed at iBeam. It started actually in 2010 with the co-developers Kaho Abe and Ramsey Nasser, who were residents at iBeam. And they put this together and eventually got to the stage where it could be an after-school program, and then we wanted to take it to that next level, bring it in school, make that crossover. That's when Crystal was brought in to help us make that step.
Awesome, great. And I would say that there's, and we can we'll put links with the recording of this interview, I guess we'll call it, because there's a beautiful video that shows a lot of, Crystal is featured in it actually, and shows a lot of the students and the work that they were creating in this context, and then has interviews with both other colleagues from the school as well as iBeam. So check that out for sure. So LRNG Innovators, I just want to step back for a second. So through this sort of granting project, we had a 3-year, we had an opportunity to do 3 challenges, right? And so those challenges, over the 3 grant cycles that took on 3 different challenges, but they're all interrelated. And these challenges were designed by educators who were working on bringing connected learning opportunities to the youth that they work with, right? And so by connected learning, we mean, opportunities to really connect youth interests things that are meaningful to them and relevant in their context and in their world, support them in being creators, not just consumers, and to make things, and also to connect them with both peers as well as larger opportunities in the world that might be around community, career, college, etc. But that really engage them in work that they can move forward. And these challenges were designed by those educators trying to do this work, and with the idea that these are some of the key challenges that we run into when we try to do this work in schools. So the challenge that you all had, this connecting inside and outside of school work, is something that we had, I think it was 10 other grantees also working on at the same time. And from an NWP staff perspective, I could see the sort of set of work happening around the country and the sort of push and pull of what's really possible and what's really exciting about this. Like outside of school often has an opportunity to reach a set of kids through their interests and really develop some rich opportunities for them. In school, there's an opportunity to go deeper, to connect to other disciplinary knowledge, and all the kids are there. So how do we bring those spaces together was really what your proposal was. So I'd love to hear about that. What was exciting about that? What was challenging about that? How did you sort of navigate some of those challenges? And also, what are some of the questions that remain?
So I guess the first part was from bringing it after school to inside of school was the fact that I had the opportunity to work with Kaho, who had been a professor of mine while I was at NYU. And it was a very collaborative, one-on-one teacher sort of experience. So she made sure, along with Ramsey, we had several weekend PDs where I would just go hang out with them, and they would essentially teach me how they were running their program, what exactly they were doing. And because they had written it in such a way that worked as an after-school program, then I had the challenge of okay, well, how do I communicate this to my administration in a way that the DOE wants it, how it's supposed to be structured. So I had to help them put in that lingo to create a lesson plan that I was all right, well, this is how it would look like for a teacher if you want to say I have a lesson plan that you can follow. The way that they had it was very college-centered, which was obviously whatever the university at that point, whatever their standards are. But on a high school level, a middle school, elementary school level, we have so many other standards we need to find. And CTE, specifically career technical education, has other things that need to be covered through a lesson. So also pinpointing, all right, well, specifically this part of Playable Fashion meets this section, which isn't necessarily always technology. There's CTE for fashion, for food, for technology. So making sure that you drag and drop what is relevant and necessary for what you're teaching. So that was definitely what made it really really easy, was that I was able to have this one-on-one with Kaho and Ramsey about what this program was, and I could tell them immediately, okay, well, if I'm going to run this program 5 days a week, 1 hour, whereas you guys had 1 day a week or 2 days a week for 3 hours, right. There was a lot more time where you wasn't stop and go. Be okay, well, maybe this section needs to be cut down like this. Possibly I can stretch it out. What would you guys recommend? And then translating what would look like a block of work time into 20 minutes, right. So that it would work for the students. So that was one big thing that we did.
Great.
And I know from IBEAM's perspective, something that really helped us a lot was having AOIT in so early as a partner school and thinking about that. Because obviously without that school buy-in and being behind it and thinking about how we could work together, it would have been impossible. And I wasn't there for the beginning of this timeline, but having that first year there was just essential, just to get in there and work with the school and have them be an active partner.
Right.
I think without that long time, it wouldn't have been possible. And obviously working with granting organisations that respect this takes time.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
And you won't see results straight away, and sometimes it takes longer to hear back. So having those two, great. things all working together.
Yeah, I remember your colleague Lauren writing about that relationship building right at the front end. That was so key to then sort of developing this. And then what I hear in your story is really this like mentorship that you could sort of go back and forth and test and develop things, and then you had someone to.
Yeah, and I think also to the administration's credit, right? There's so many things where like, oh, let's try this cool, fun new program, but you really have to have an administration that sort of believes the people who are working with it. And at the time, that was Cynthia Folks, who was the founder of AYT. And essentially, she understood the importance of CTE and seeing how things ran out. So the only reason I was really given a chance was because she really believed that, oh, we could make this game design program. We can have this cool, fun thing. And it's not just like a spin-off, like a one-off. We can turn it into something else. So like knowing that there was someone who on the administrative level was also looking at this and was like, okay, well, this actually benefits my school because, and not just expecting like immediate response of like, well, what is the result of this program? It's more of like, okay, let's see how this plays out, let's see where it goes, and it ultimately ended up being very, very successful. So,
yeah,
it was good.
That's great. Okay, so I know I asked about challenges and questions. I was wondering though if we could unpack this idea of game design itself. So this is a CTE curriculum, which I think a lot of folks in our network are familiar with, but less familiar probably with like game design as CTE and game design in schools. So maybe we just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so actually I'm fortunate enough to have the first approved program, so we're kind of like a guinea pig, we're the first ever. And what
Approved by New York State.
Approved by New York State, yes.
Yeah.
If there are other programs out there, let me know, I want to communicate.
Yeah.
But essentially what it turned into was I understand, right, how people consume media, what people do stuff, and that sometimes people see video game design and they're assuming like, oh, it's just going to be people playing games, and ultimately I have to say that yes, we do play games in the class, but so much of it is that concept that Ramsey spoke about, which is turning consumers into creators. And from the moment kids step into my classroom, I tell them, sure, we're going to play a video game, but I need you to stop seeing it as you, the gamer, sitting in your couch. It's like you, the developer, looking at another artist's work, and essentially turn it into like a critiquing sort of a class, and looking at what people are doing and building up on that, and understanding where a certain theory comes from. That a shooter isn't just a shooter. There might be a story that comes out through it. There's something that's being told, but the mechanic of how the game is actually played just happens to be that. It's everything that makes the game to do.
And something we've talked about a lot is how, yes, this is game design, but also it's about technology as a whole.
Right.
And how you're critical about the technology, how that technology works, how when you sit down and play a video game, knowing where it came from and who was those creators as well, that's something they can bring outside of game design into other ways.
Yeah.
I mean, technology is obviously everywhere now in our everyday lives, so being critical of that from that perspective is a really good way to go, and it's already an interest of so many students.
And what's also interesting in the way that I like to say is that I tell my students, if you come out of this not wanting to be a game designer, that's fine with me. I would prefer that you take skills that turn you into a project manager. And what's also so interesting is the way that I teach it with the game engine Unity that I use. They don't just need to use that for game design. It could be used for art installation, medical simulations, military simulations. It could be used for so many things. So they will automatically have a unique skill set that they can apply to any other sort of field that they want to work with. So if they love medicine and they want to do medicine simulations, there they go. They have the skill already, they can program it, they can make it, and still make it about what they love.
And when I think about like the gloves that the kids designed or something that have, you know, control mechanisms in them, I think it was on Mars rover, actually. So this is sort of a random connection, but just like how the opportunities unfold, that they had a sculptor on the Mars rover team, because the knowledge that he had about three-dimensional design was so important for, you know, developing that tool. So anyway, I mean, I think there's like lots of interesting paths that can open up this way with both the physical technology as well as the actual Unity platform and everything. Yeah.
And this sort of links together. We've followed a lot of students who started with the Playable Fashion after school program and then have gone on to college, and now some of them even started their own businesses and things like that. So we can see how starting with something that interrogates technology at sort of that level and plays with it can lead to something entirely different.
Yeah.
And for some of those students, they describe it as the in that they had into technology,
Mm-hmm.
into coding, into developing. So,
Which also kind of lends credence to why I was able to make the game program successful.
Yep.
Because it was about the kids. And the students that I had when we ran the program, I had so many that sure they were interested in game design, but going back to experiencing technology differently, if they programmed something and saw it react on the screen, it didn't feel real to them. It was like this sort of nebulous idea of like, all right, well, I typed a thing and it made a thing and I guess that's it. But turning that into, I programmed this small board and it has a physical connection to the real world where I can use a glove and interact with a switch essentially to make a game playable, really had them like, oh gosh, this is amazing. And the best story that I can have is my 2 class clowns. I absolutely love them, Jaden and Anthony. Immediately went from taking that energy of just like goofing off and playing video games and like still being very nice and respectful, but clearly like this is not what I want to do, to I'm going to make a pair of pants that I can type on. Because it would be hilarious to just like, hold on 1 minute, and then just start typing on my pants. So it's like the student engagement like rose so much, and it's like, seeing how that light turned on for them. It was that into technology that made them feel like, I can actually do this. It's not something that only people who are quote unquote smart can do it. I can take whatever my level of, I guess, technology intelligence is and transform it to something of that same caliber.
yeah. And this is something I know we've talked about, that we've all talked about, that a lot of the actual technological components used are relatively inexpensive in comparison to higher level technology programming, all of this basic circuitry. And that's something that I know IBEAM's really keen on, and I'm sure AOIT is as well, making sure it's open in the sense that it's accessible.
Right.
That it doesn't price out a whole bunch of students who can't afford to buy, nickel wire or various.
Because it's like in its sense, like the actual getting of the materials on a school level, it's not that expensive. I think for 30 students, it might have ended up being somewhere around $15 to $20 in order to get that. And like some people might be like, oh, I might not have $20 to spend on all of this stuff, but it's like at a school level, that was pretty cheap. So for us at least, to be able to run it and to have a classroom set that I can rotate, because it's something that it's not set. It can be reset and retyped, and every time a student logs in to computer, they can just connect this board and upload their information like nothing was ever done to the board beforehand. Made it even more accessible. So what a classroom set of 30 ended up being usable by over 40 students, 50 students. It was something really cool.
And the software's all open source as
well.
Yeah,
it was all free. Didn't have to download it. So even if they immediately did not have access to the technology and they wanted to keep learning about how to program it, they could do it from home. They could do it from the school computers, from their phones even. And it was very accessible, super easy, and anyone could use it.
Yay, great. Okay, that's really awesome. So let's talk a little bit. I have other questions too that keep percolating, but I want to try to stay where I said. So if we talk, what were some of the challenges of this work? Sort of watching across the grants, I've been seeing, the challenges pop up here and there, but I didn't really have a chance to talk to you guys about it. So to the degree that you feel comfortable talking about what was hard, I think we in this network really value that kind of inquiry into some of the hard pieces and how do we address them.
For me, the most difficult aspect was, this was actually my first full year as a teacher by myself. Before I had been a teacher assistant, and before that I had been contracted as a consultant, so I was always with somebody else. And I didn't have any formal teacher training in the way that I became a teacher. So this was my first all right, we're taking the training wheels off, go ride your bike. And I had it, I obviously had my own sort of fears of, I can't do this is too much, on top of all of the exorbitant amounts of work that teachers are given and they have to do. One difficulty that we did face was, I thought it would make more sense if we had this sort of fun experience later in the school year, closer to the end of the school year, before all of the exams happened. without noticing how often kids could be taken out of class because they needed to do something, because they were seniors, because they were this, because, you know, all of this testing was needed and they needed this extra test prep. So the ultimate grouping of students that participated in this larger portion of the program ended up being a little bit smaller than I had anticipated. For that particular day that we had Kaho, Ramsey, and Lauren coming by to the school, throughout the school year, whenever there was smaller things that I was implementing, that was easier. But it was more of just like really the logistics of getting it to work out, which leads into how I'm going to be working on that in the future, is that now that the program is approved and I don't have to worry about all of this crazy amounts of paperwork, I have plans to make it something that's embedded into the entire curriculum, not just one unit, to let students who really feel that this technological, this hardware aspect of game design is what they want to do, and make sure that students across all levels are engaged at all times and there's something relevant to what they're doing. Instead of just like, well, you gotta wait until the end of the school year to do the thing you want to do. It's like, all right, cool, well, this makes sense in this context. Here's some stuff that you can do, and that, because a large part of what I do that I realized was a challenge before even the program being approved was not all game designers are the same. You have some people who are good at art, some people who are good at technology, hardware, some people who can do all of that, and making sure that each student has that ability to express that interest, keeping them engaged, but keeping the overarching theme of game design connected.
That's great.
And something we've been thinking about is iBeam, and this was written in our original grant in a very, what would you say? We really wanted to do it. We wanted to do it so badly. Thank you, that's the word I wanted. My personal word count's going down. But something that we've talked about a lot is the fact that we wanted more than just one teacher trained up on this who is working in schools. And so what do we do now to give Crystal the tools she needs, and how can iBeam support to get this to other teachers, to make this curriculum that's shareable and usable and get people excited about it? And I think the way we are thinking about this is that this resource we're developing as part of this retreat as well will be the start of moving into that too. So, and I think this has re-enthused both of us, both AOIT and iBeam, to kind of lift up and think about that in a better way, and how we can do it in a way that isn't just putting the curriculum online. How can we do it in a way just like maybe videos or more interactive or workshops, and then what we can do in the way of getting more funding if that's necessary to make it happen.
That's great, yeah, and I'm really excited about this resource you're developing. Maybe we could just take a second and sort of play a little bit with, because we're a writing project network, and teachers who teach writing and across disciplines and grade levels, and you know, and we care about literacy learning in, you know, holistically, and the literacies of today, and so. You know, and we are a network that we could potentially connect to this curriculum that, you know, congratulations on getting this developed, and it's so exciting that it's out there in the world in this, you know, formal way. So we could take up this work and these practices. And I just was, and I know we talked about it a little bit, like thinking about like the ways that working with these tools are sort of these new literacies that are developing, whether it's a computational literacy, whether it's a sort of literacy around game design literacy, and I guess in game design you have all these components and all these, you know, narratives and all these, I don't know, maybe we could just sort of play with that idea.
Absolutely, I totally agree, because pretty much half of my curriculums ends up being teaching vocabulary to students about things that they already know about, but they didn't know what the word was. And understanding when something is applicable, and also how it can be transferable across technologies or project management schemes. Something as simple as user experience is so universal through design ideas, and it's like, it's pretty much the basis for how our technologies are made, how our phones are so responsive to how we do it, because we're thinking about how the user does that. And the concept, I think, of design thinking is something that I feel should just be implemented as like a literacy, because it's not just applicable to tech, it's applicable to how to make everything human-centered, human-centered design thinking. To make everything for the user. And I would absolutely love to be working on getting that understanding out, and also so that people are like, well, that's just a video game, and it's like, well, this could be considered X, Y, Z, this, that, and the other, and this is what its effects ultimately are. Would be amazing.
Yeah.
Cool.
I agree.
Awesome. Well, thank you both for taking the time to talk with us and for being here with us and developing this great resource that, again, people can find at thecurrent.educatorinnovator.org in just a little bit. And really looking forward to continuing to work and think with you into the future.
Absolutely.
I'm so excited too.
Thank you.